Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. In this video I want to cover the basic steps that I would take when starting to sculpt out an environment and starting to plan the environment. This comes at a good time, as the previous video I did in this series was about sculpting tools. And like I say, in this video I just want to go over basic things we need to think about, what we need to do, materials we need to create, all in aid of to get us started to start sculpting. So essentially that's what this video is about. In the previous video, if this is your first one here to this series, I'd like to say I do go in depth about the landscaping tools, and I also offer out free alpha brushes, and alpha brushes enable you to build certain things using a height map if you like. I do, like I say, go into explicit details. I go into great depths in detail of how alpha brushes work and sculpting tools. So go and check that video out. If you're interested in becoming an environmental artist, then I'd recommend starting the series out. This is a few videos into the series now, but in this series I'm going to high depths of how to build a game world. So yeah. Like I said, there's a few things that I want to point out about planning for our environment. The first thing I want to go over is world partition. Our world partition view, I go over this in detail as well a couple of videos ago, where we built our environment ready for world partition, or using world partition and how it works. That's in that video. But as you can see, this is our proxy grid. You'll notice that it's moved. Previous videos I did, the lines there, the green and red lines, were in the center of the world, and essentially what I've done is I've come to my outliner, I've gone to the landscape, clicked on the landscape. You'll see, you should know by now that this is full of proxies. I clicked on the landscape, and essentially I've changed its transform location to 000. And what this is going to do in the future, if I want to use absolute world position, this is going to enable us to keep positive values. That's possibly one reason. And it also helps when organizing with assets, because you can drag an asset into your scene and just center out its transform location, and it'll send it to the topmost left corner of the environment, and then you could just move it across into a space, and you could have all your assets lined up in space, ready to be used. This is a very common workflow when creating environments, having all your assets already in the environment, because you can go onto Quixel or Sketchfab and all this good stuff and import all your meshes and all this good stuff. But once you create or drag that mesh in, you've got to sit here waiting for the shaders to compile. So it's a good workflow to bring your assets in to the world and leave them in the world, because then everything you do in that world will adapt with your assets, or your assets will adapt with the world, and vice versa, and they're just there ready for you, and it's just a lot better workflow. A lot of people do it. So as you can see here, my pivot point, let's speed this camera up a little bit. My pivot point is right there, and this is at the topmost left of my landscape. As you can see here, this little white arrow thing is my camera moving about, as you can see, and you'll notice that my top leftmost point of the landscape is now center in the world, which is indicated by this pivot point. And you'll notice in the world partition view as well is we've got a green line and a red line. The green line signifies our x-axis, and the red line signifies our y-axis. You'll notice we've got a blue arrow here as well, but you can't see that because this is a top-down view of our landscape, so we're viewing it from above like this, but that's why you can't see the blue one. But this is very interesting, because being very well orientated in your world is a good reason to center out your landscape as well. So like I say, if your transform location of your landscape is some mad numbers on the Y and X here, and then your Z axis will be something like 100, I think, you could just center it out and it just flattens out your environment and centers it in the world so you get a better coordination. But keep in mind the red line and the green line are signified here by your pivot point as well, with this red arrow and this green arrow and red arrow. Also, one more thing in the world partition, if you want to measure something from this corner to the other, hold down your middle mouse button and that'll give you a good measurement in centimeters of the distance. Maybe you have in this corner a beach with a dock where maybe a group of soldiers are coming in to invade a base on the island or whatever. I don't know. You can say, I want that base to be so many meters away, and you look here and you can get a good 36 meters there, measured in centimeters, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. I just thought I'd point that out as well. So that's that for world partition. What's next? Okay, so landscaping tools. We're going to go to landscape mode at the top left here, from selection to landscape, or shift and 2. What I want to talk about now, which is a very important part of environmental art and getting started, is layers. I do go over this briefly. I say briefly, well, when we created the landscape itself, I did go over edit layers, but I feel like I need to give it another pass. So to showcase better what this is doing, I'm going to load up my environment. So I'm going to drag over all these proxies like this. I'm going to right click inside the square and click load region from selected, and this now should load our landscaping. And there you go. There's our landscape. It's still actually loading it. So base layer in my sculpting tools of my landscape mode, not just sculpting tools in the paint and the manage, you have your edit layers. This edit layer is very important. So the way this environment now, this landscape is set up, let's just call this our base layer. So what I like to do is just to click on the padlock and lock that layer. Now this layer cannot be changed by anything else, only until I unlock this. You can see the layer is locked. You must unlock it before you can work on this layer. So now our base layer is our safety net. If we make changes via sculpting, via painting, water bodies and all that good stuff, we will always have this base layer to fall back on. Okay, so what I want to do, because I know I'm going to be sculpting this environment myself, I'm going to right click on this base layer and create a new layer. Now this has created this new layer, you can see here, it's called layer 1. It's going to edit it and prepare all this nonsense. And what I'm going to do is click on it again and press F2, and I'm going to name this layer sculpting. I don't know why I said it like that, guys. So I'm going to press enter, and now I've got a new layer for sculpting. Any damages I make in sculpting, I can just delete that layer and it will always fall back to this base layer which is there. And it's not just this one layer, like I've got this and I could do a bit of sculpting here, whatever I want to do on this landscape like that. You can hardly see it, but if I get closer you can. And I can make them changes. I can come in here, right click and click delete. And are you sure? Yes. And you'll notice it'll delete that layer, and I can come here and all that sculpting has disappeared. So I'm just going to go ahead and recreate a layer. I'm going to press F2 on it. I have to click it again and press F2. Sculpting. Like so. And now I've got my sculpting layer. You can go ahead in there. I always use my base layer. You can use other layers if you want, but I always use my base layer to right click and create a new one. You can create as many layers as you want. Maybe you want to have sculpting. I might change this name actually. Sculpting base pass. Essentially what I mean by that is sculpting base pass is where I sculpt out the environment at a very minimum. I'm getting the shape of what environment I want to create. And then you could create a new layer and call it sculpting detail, you know, and then go into more detail of the sculpting, because sculpting just doesn't happen in just an hour. It takes a hell of a long time. So now I've got my base layer and my sculpting base pass. This is just a base pass of my sculpting. I'm happy with the way these edit layers are set up for now. These are very important and very helpful when creating environments. Keep that in mind, that's something you must keep in mind, environmental artist. Okay, so now we're back into our environment, into our level. What I want to do as well, one more step that I take to setting up my level, is to create bookmarks. Now I'm at the topmost left of my landscape. If I go ahead and just click on the landscape, oh no, I have to do it this way, sorry. You'll see my pivot point is here, and it's here at the top left. So what I'm going to do is create a bookmark here. To create a bookmark, we can do left control on the keyboard, hold it down, and then press 1. And that's going to create that bookmark. So if I move over here, and I press 1 on the keyboard, it'll put me back there. And what I want to do is to create a bookmark for each corner of the landscape. I'll create one here, control and 2. Holding left control down, pressing 2. We'll come to this corner here. I'm going to hold left control and 3, which is the opposite side of our topmost left point. And then here we're going to hold left control and 4. And now I've got a bookmark at each corner of my landscape. Very useful. That's one thing you must do. And then we're going to hit save. So we've got save up here, which saves our level, which I'm quite happy about. But down here where it says all saved, I'm not able to show it now, but if you click on that, say you make changes in your content drawer to anything like that, that is not included in this level, you have a hard save here. You can click that and a box will come up and you can just click save if you want to save everything. Okay, so what is next? What I'd like to do as well when I'm starting to sculpt out my environment is to create a basic material in which we could detect slopes with, and we know what our flat areas are and what our sloped areas are. Because if we come down here to here and say we start sculpting here, you'll notice if I come down here a bit like this, you'll notice that even though I've got slopes there, and if I'm over here, you can see it's just the checkerboard texture. So I like to create just a very simple material, just so it showcases me with colour where these slopes are. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to my content drawer. I'm going to go into landscape, and you see there's my alpha brushes. I'm going to right click here, new folder. I'm just going to call this landscape shader. Now you can call it a shader or a material. You may hear other people on YouTube saying it, or other people everywhere calling it a material, or they call it a shader. They're both the same things, it's just two different words. Just thought I'd point that out. I'm going to come into the landscape shader folder. I'm going to right click, create a new material. Oops, sorry. I'm going to use my naming convention, which is KM dash sculpting shader. Right, so now I've got a sculpting shader. I'm going to right click on that sculpting shader and create a material instance. What I want to do now is put some logic in here and get a bit of a slope detection thing going. I don't know, we'll see. The first thing I want to do, well, I'm not going to go through how the material graph works. I've got other videos on my YouTube which signify how all this works. For now, what I want to do is use material attributes. Because the landscape shader is used, materials are used better than just whatever. I always start with material attributes. The first thing I want is two colours, so I'm going to press 3 on my keyboard and hold it down, and then left click with a mouse. I'm going to get what's called a vector 3. I'm going to right click and convert to parameter. I'm going to call this slope colour, because I'm just going to use colours for this at the minute, guys. I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to call this flat colour, maybe. I like that. So in the flat colour, I'm going to change this to green. So in my green here, I'm just going to increase that green. I don't want a dead bright green. It's not a darkish green, so it's not blinding and dead reflective. For slope, I want to use the brown colour. I'm going to drag this down here a little bit. Right, so Just try and get that looks more browny. It's not brown enough. That's brown enough. Use that. About there. Okay, so I've got now a slope colour and a flat colour. This is going to be our grass and this is going to be our rock, if you like. I'm going to blend these with a blend material attributes. So what we can do here, if I spell it correctly, right click in the material graph or shader graph. We're going to type blend and then matte. And you'll see it gets us a blend material attributes. Now these vector 3s will not work in this blend material attributes because these are float 3 and this is expecting a material attribute. So the way we can bypass that, I do prefer to use blend material attributes when we're blending colours together as well. All materials, blend material attributes is nice. You also have standard, a material layer blend standard. I'll get more into that the more we dive into shaders for our environment. So what I need to do here, it won't let me search it from here. If you click on the pin and drag away, you get your search box up. And it won't let me use a set material attributes because it won't be accepted via this vector 3. So you just click anywhere in the graph and type set material attributes. I'm going to get this node and this allows us to add various things using this elements bar here. We can just click the plus and add an element and you see we get a base colour, metallic, specular, roughness and all that good stuff. You can just use these set material attributes. But all we need is the base colour. So I'm just going to come down here and hit plus and get a base colour. And I can just drag this vector 3 into the base colour and then that can go into the A. Like so, we can drag off this blend material attributes into the out pin of our sculpting shader output node. What I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this set material attributes node. I'm going to drag that into the base colour and that can go in the B of our blend material attributes. You can see nothing is working here. Well, I say nothing's working. It's because this alpha, this blend material attributes is based off this alpha. So if I press 1 on the keyboard and left click, I'll just get a constant 1. If I put this into the alpha, the A and the B of this blend material attributes is based on a 0:1 ratio. So at 0, it's going to be using the A pin. And if I set this value to a 1, not 10, just 1, you'll see that we get the flat colour. So what I want to do is use a function that's going to allow us to detect slope or angle of our landscape. So I'm going to drag off this alpha and get what's called a slope mask. And this is going to enable us to detect the slope at which our landscape is bending at. Okay, so you can see we've got 4 pins here, tangent normal. I wouldn't worry about this just now. You do need a normal map from your material for this to work. We've got a slope angle. Inside the slope mask on the slope angle material input, which is this input here. But I'm inside, this function holds logic inside. In this series, we're going to be using this hell of a lot, guys, so I'm not going to go through all of it now. But this slope angle here on this input, you'll see that we've got the X, Y and Z all lined up here. So if I hold 3 on the keyboard and get a vector 3 in, these vector 3s can be used to signify these X, Y and Z, red, green and blue. Actually, X, Y and Z. Oh wow, I think, sorry guys, I think earlier in the video I said that the green is X, and that is completely wrong. If I did say that, that is wrong. The green is Y and the red is X. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's my bad, guys. Sorry about that. So this vector 3, the red, green and blue of this vector 3 node signifies X, Y and Z, which you can see here on this little, if you can see down here, you'll see X, Y and Z, which is red, green and blue. You can use these vector 3s to signify what you want to use on the slope angle. The material, the function input itself in the blue channel, we can call it, or the Z channel, has already got a 1. So essentially, you don't need to add anything outside the slope mask. But as an environmental artist, I do like to drag off this vector 3 and put it into slope angle. You'll see nothing's changed, but this is just telling me in my mind that we have set it to the Z axis. So essentially what it means is this is set the slope mask so it's constantly looking down flat onto our landscape. After that we have a fall off. I think, if I remember correctly, the fall off is the blend. I'll just keep it called fall off for now. I'm going to right click on this input of the slope mask. If you right click on it, you can see promote to parameter, and then you can just get rid of the S in parentheses, just drag that down. As you can see now, we're getting a sharp line like before. We didn't. We was getting that blended line. That's because the inputs of these have already got these kind of values in them. If we do that, you can see there now the blending is not great. But if I increase the default value, I should start to see blending. Well, I'm not. Maybe if I go -5. Nope. I'll keep it at 1 for now. It needs a cheap contrast. Oh, wait there. Ha! I think I was changing the cheap contrast. Let's raise this fall off. Was it the fall? There you go. I was changing the cheap contrast. Why didn't you tell me, guys? Anyway, so you can see the straight line now is sharp with no fall off, and then 1, you'll see that we're getting a nice blend between the brown and green. The cheap contrast is going to change the angle at which our slope works, but we can get into that into the material instance. So if I hit apply now, we've now created this shader. I am going to save actually. Let's just save it all. You see how I press save there, guys? And we've made a save in the scene. This is going back to what I was saying before. So I've made a save in the level, but down here I've still got 2 unsaved. You click that, this KM Sculpt shader and instance of that shader needs to be saved. And this is what I was saying before, which is the hard save. So if I hit save, it's now saved that shader. Okay, so let's apply this material instance from our sculpt shader to our landscape. Now, in the past, if you just got a single layer of a landscape, you could simply click on landscape, come down here and add your material instance into there. But with landscape proxies, or world partition if you like, we need to add it to all of them. So what I do is click the topmost, hold the left shift down and left click the bottommost, and it selects them all, and you'll see we've got our landscape material here. What I can simply do is come to my content drawer. You'll see I've got my sculpt shader instance, a material instance. I can simply go over and drag that in there. But what I prefer to do to make sure it works properly is just highlight it, click on it so it's highlighted in blue. Come down here and click this little backwards arrow, use selected asset from content browser. Click that and it'll add that particular shader to the landscape. Okay, so now we've got our landscape shader applied to our landscape. We can just click off that now. We'll close our landscape up, folder up, and now we're back to normal. If we come in here, you can just start seeing that brown coming through there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to my content drawer, open our landscape material instance. Let's plop that up there a bit. I'm going to come down here. Now this is a good way to signify how you want your shader to blend with. I'm just going to come to landscaping tools. We'll go to flatten. Just going to come in here and make that brush a little bit smaller. Get to about here and just do that. And what I'm doing now is creating a sharp fall off rather than this smoothed out slope, if you like. So what this is going to let us do now, it's going to let me signify how much slope and blend I want on there. Let's just smoothen this out a little bit at the top so it's not so ugly. Okay, so we'll come out of landscape mode, and what I'm going to do now is change these values, my cheap contrast and my fall off. So cheap contrast, I'm going to go -4, and you can see it's completely flipped it. No, if I come from negative values to positive and just go for a 3, you'll see it's gone back there now. Maybe a 2, 3, 4, 5. See, maybe a 4 will do. And that's just setting that angle up there now. What I can do is change the fall off. And this will change the blend. And now we can see a little bit coming through here. I just keep dragging this over. Like so. And now what this is telling me is here it's going to be a sharp decline. And then over here it's going to be relatively smooth. And you can see now we've got nice green colour and brown colour, which is going to signify our slopes. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to save the material instance and close it down. And what I'm going to do now is just quickly hard save everything. Save selected. Let's save everything now. And now we're all set up, almost ready to go sculpting. What I want to do now is just to showcase how important scale is when sculpting out. If we look at this now, we can see we've got this little indentation in the geometry. I'm going to go to sculpting mode, in my landscape mode, sorry, into sculpting. And choose my sculpt brush. Set this to its default value, maybe a bit bigger actually, and give it full strength. And what I want to do here is just to go down a bit, like so. I'm going to start off by going down, like so. And then down here, I'm going to make my brush ever smaller. I'm going to go to flatten. And get that furthest point down there. And just start flattening this out. Right, so now I've got a bit of flattening stuff going on there. Like so. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, this brush. And just start flattening out all around this edge. So I get here. There we go. Okay, so this is relatively kind of the depth I'm going to be going for. Right, so like I said, you want a sense of scale, guys. Scale is very important. Let's just smooth this out so it's not so rough. Like so. Like so. There you go. Just a little bit of whatever. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just do a little bit more touch in here. One here. Maybe one over here. And what this is going to do now, it's going to show me scale. Now, when we look at this, we're thinking to ourselves, well, that doesn't look that big. That doesn't look big. I come out of landscape mode. I'm going to do a quick save as a level. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to right click here and play from here. Okay, so now this looks fine. I come here, let's see if we get a bit of a shallow, but that's still high up, but that's our most shallow indentation I made. I come around there, you're probably wondering why I'm moving this quick. I did set this in the first person blueprint. That's a bit deeper, you can see the scale of that already. And then this one is a hell of a lot deeper. But if I come around here to this side, yeah, come over here. And now look at that drop. Like so. Now you can see how deep that is. This is the point I'm making, guys. It is very important to keep scale in mind. This. Is it going to land on the ledge? Ooh, just missed it. Yeah. It's very important as an environmental artist to keep scale in mind, because that is very, very high up, as you can see there. Also, a good way to keep reference of scale is to use a mannequin. Let me slow my camera down. Right, so, use a mannequin, content draw. I'm going to click on content. I'll go to search and type man. When I look at the top here, you get an ABP Manny. I just drag that in. You can see my Manny's there. And look at the size of him compared to the rest. I click away and we can just see our mannequin there, and then the rest of the environment. So scale is a big, big factor when building a world in Unreal Engine. Okay, so we're nearly at the end. There is one more crucial point that I want to make when starting to be an environmental artist, or creating a world, if you like. And the most important part is thought and planning. Planning is the most integral part of creating a world. Over this week, since the last week's video, over this week I've thought a bit about what I want to do in this world. And in previous videos I've done, it's always been like mountainscapes and all one. But with intentions of later in the series showcasing an ocean shader, I've decided that I'm going to go in the way of an island or multiple islands on the same landscape. And this is also a good reason why it's very important to keep scale in mind, because doing an island is very important. You'll see if I come to pure ref, I've already got islands set up. Just click at the top, Control and F, and I've made pure ref full screen. Oh, Control and F, middle mouse button. Okay, so as you can see this week I've dragged in just a few images of islands. That's quite a nice island. But I think that's this island, but from a different angle, possibly. But as you can see, I've got a few islands here that I'm going to signify. I'm not going to go for ones like this and ones like this, because I feel that is just not showcasing enough land to create a multiple biome environment. This image are used for scale reference. As you can see, these are quite high cliffs. This actual image, not taken by myself, but it's from my native country, which is England. I think this is Pembrokeshire, or it's somewhere west anyway. But if we look at, this is the kind of island I want to do, like an island like this, and then maybe another island at different corners maybe. I don't know, this is just something that needs to be planned. Like I said, it's very important to plan what you're going to be doing in your game environment. So yeah, this is one major point I wanted to point out. That in this series, for the rest of the series, I'm going to be aiming for an island. This is quite nice. I can see myself having some rocky mountains at the top here, some grasslands and maybe some sandy lands. You can see here there's a bit of a deserty looking thing, and then back to some grasslands, and it's multiple biomes, that image, so that's the kind of island that I think I'm going to go for in this series. Okay, so like I say, planning is very important, getting your scale is very important, having a good material where we can see we're blending very nicely with our slopes and our flat grounds. This is also very important. As the way it stands now, I'm going to go for an island in this series. I've got my sculpting shader set up, my layers in my landscape mode are set up, everything's set up now. I've got a good scale, even though you can only just see him. You can see my little mannequins here for scale reference only. So as it stands now, guys, that's the end of the video. I am now ready to sculpt our environment. Keeping to my word, I am going to sculpt the environment at a level design, speed level design rate, because I really don't feel it's appropriate for me to record myself for 3-4 hours trying to sculpt out a base pass. Like I mentioned earlier before, you do a base pass of your environment, so you get a general scale, a general size and shape of what you want. Well, at least what I want my island to be like in this world. I'm going to do a speed level design of me sculpting, if you like, and it's just a base pass, guys. Later in the series we're going to be making additions to our sculpting and things like that, as this is what happens in the real world. Okay, so that is it for this video this week. Next week I probably will post the speed level design of me creating this environment, and then after that we are going to be looking at landscape shaders, I think, or maybe some other things, I don't know yet. We'll soon find out. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.